exposed. My parents' shocking plan to humiliate me on my wedding day led to an incredible twist. In the heart of a small Ohio town, 27-year-old Sarah clutched her planner. The pages laden with wedding details that once filled her with glee now felt suffocating. Just weeks from her big day, excitement was tainted by the impending dread of what her parents had planned. "They think it will be funny," she muttered under her breath, anxiety twisting her stomach into knots. The vision of her wedding crumbling under their insidious tales haunted her. Her dreams of sharing heartfelt moments and powerful speeches were threatened by their outdated desire for humor at her expense. Sarah had always believed her parents were her staunchest allies, unwavering in their support as she navigated academia. Yet shock washed over her as eavesdropping turned into a betrayal that felt bone deep. Their intention to share stories of her childhood missteps bare every embarrassing moment for laughter seemed utterly monstrous. How could they confuse humiliation with love? It twisted her understanding of all the late nights they spent with her, turning it into a facade of support that was now cracking under pressure. Would they expose her vulnerability in front of family and friends? The very notion made her palms sweat and her breath quicken. Before she could process the impact of their cruel plan, Jake, the brother who had stepped away from the familial weight years ago, strolled back into her life. His arrival was unexpected. The tension he once fostered between them had melted into something more complex. Yet, the moment they spoke, it felt like peeling back a protective layer from their scarred past. "They just want you to be humble," he said, his tone heavy with irony. Sarah recalled the countless times she wished for a brother who would stand alongside her in her battles. Instead, he was the one who left when expectations suffocated him. Weeks trickled by, an ephemeral countdown to a day ensnared with her parents' misguided intentions. With each passing hour, Sarah felt more trapped, her sense of loyalty battling the desire to break free. She raised questions silently, battling her racing thoughts. What would it mean to confront them? Would it destroy the family ties she still desperately sought? The fear of public ridicule loomed violently, overshadowing her years of hard work and sacrifices made to reach her position as a lecturer. The very stories that were meant to entertain felt like shackles wrapped around her future. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In a fit of anxiety-induced resolve, Sarah toyed with the idea of rewriting the narrative they wished to spin. What if she took control, transformed their planned humiliation into her story of resilience? Yet, the undercurrent of dread surged anew as she listened to her parents' plans unfold further. Their deep-seated fears about social standing and the refusal to let their daughter shine stung more than she could bear. Would they see her success as a threat? The weight of empowerment she longed for turned into an agonizing burden as the wedding loomed ever closer. Sarah found her heart racing at the thought of standing before loved ones, prepared to speak truth instead of submission. The moment of decision was upon her. An exhilarating leap toward self-acceptance gnawed at her insides. Would she let fear determine her story? Or seize the chance to carve her path and reshape the relationship with her family completely? Her mind spun, fierce determination skirmishing with doubt, anchoring her in an emotional tempest that beckoned with each tick of the clock. The days rushed forward, each one a reminder of the impending day that felt more like a battleground than a celebration. Sarah's evenings were consumed with silent contemplation, where she wrestled her thoughts like fierce opponents in a ring. Each time she envisioned her parents' laughter ringing out as they shared her most intimate childhood mishaps, her resolve hardened. What would it look like to take control amidst chaos? She needed a plan. The wedding wasn't just about the vows. It became a defining moment in her relationship with her parents. The gravity of that realization settled heavily on her shoulders. With a few days remaining, Sarah drafted a speech, one that twisted expected narratives into something authentically hers. Every misstep her parents intended to expose would instead serve as a stepping stone to her triumph. She would reclaim her story, slowly peeling away the layers her parents had, unknowingly or not, sought to suffocate. In her solitude, a quiet strength began to form. Each word she wrote resonated with growing confidence. Her childhood stumbles, once the source of humiliation, became badges of learning and resilience. From losing a spelling bee to tripping in the school play, she had transformed those moments into lessons she could now share. This was her narrative, and it was time to rise from the ashes of their twisted intentions, but there lingered a gnawing trepidation. What if they retaliated? What if the confrontation unraveled even more than she could foresee? That night, she called Jake, her unwavering ally despite their complicated past. He could help her navigate the treacherous waters of family dynamics, and she clung to the hope that he would be the voice of reason when she faced their reaction. "Are you ready?" he asked when she shared her plan. His tone was supportive, yet a thread of concern wove through his words. "I think you should definitely say something." But he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes confronting family can lead to unforeseen backlash. She took a deep breath. "This isn't just about me anymore, Jake. This is about claiming my space, my identity. If I don't speak out, I'll always feel diminished by their expectations." His silence resonated as a testament to her conviction. Yet, in her heart, Sarah questioned whether pursuing this path would sharpen the fissures in her family bond, or forge a new understanding. On the day before the wedding, with barely a wink of sleep, Sarah wandered to the local park that had served as a sanctuary in her youth. The sun was rising, painting the world in hues of amber. She closed her eyes, inhaling, allowing the moment's stillness to engulf her as she sought clarity. The memories of joyous days spent laughing with friends and dreaming of her future intertwined with her insecurities. Yet, she felt the truth of her identity bubbling to the surface, igniting a determination she barely recognized. As she opened her eyes, the butterflies of trepidation twisted into a fierce resolve. The time had come for her to not just accept the role into which her parents had cast her but to redefine it. Back home, she polished her speech, breathing life into her conviction. Every phrase became imbued with might, each sentence a declaration of her right to self-determination. As the evening approached and guests began to arrive, an unsettling thought crept in. Would they support her authenticity, or clamor for their comfort over her truth? The weight of those thoughts mingled with the joy of celebration, propelling her to the altar not just of union, but of self-assertion. The moment loomed when she would finally stand before her family. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, a beacon of the dualities colliding within her: fear and strength, vulnerability and empowerment. She knew this was only the beginning, but decisions made in the coming hours would echo through the corridors of her life. Would she rise to the challenge of authenticity, or would she retreat into the comfort of silence? The answers awaited her, just beyond the threshold of the venue, a decision suspended like a breath held too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that intermingled with the glow of fairy lights, Sarah stood at the threshold of the venue, the cacophony of laughter and chatter echoing around her. It all felt surreal. The beauty of the moment clashed violently against the storm brewing within her. Was she truly ready to unveil her truth? Ready to stand against the very people who had shaped so much of her life, both good and bad? With the wedding party gathered and guests finding their seats, she was gripped by an overwhelming urge to retreat. The polished wood of the doorframe felt like a shield, offering a connection to everything safe and familiar. Yet deep within, a quiet roar urged her forward, igniting the fire kindling in her chest. This celebration was not merely a ritual of union, but an arena for liberation. "Just a minute," she whispered to herself, leaning into the moment of solitude. There was power waiting to be harnessed, a call to summon courage that lay just beneath the surface. The past few days had crafted a narrative she was now ready to confront. Her mind replayed her planned speech, words that, when spoken, would reverberate through the venue like a choir, harmonizing her life's missteps into a melody of self-empowerment. Jake's words echoed in her mind, simple, yet profoundly resonant. Claim your space. It was that mantra that steadied her breaths and quickened her determination. Each inhale brought clarity, while every exhale released the apprehension clinging to her like a shroud. She would let the air of her childhood mishaps float away, each memory transforming under the lens of revelation. Yet doubt still loomed, casting a shadow over her preparations. What if, in her quest for authenticity, she shattered the delicate balance within her family? The fears of their potential outrage and manipulation haunted her, threatening to drown her resolve in a tide of uncertainty. Would they perceive her speech as a defiance or a heartfelt confession? As the strains of music began, the moment edged closer. Sarah's heart raced, but she broke into a smile, knowing she was no longer the fearful girl hiding behind the curtain of her parents' expectations. Feeling the reassuring weight of her carefully crafted words tucked away, she was reminded that this moment wasn't an end but a transformation, a pivotal point in her journey. When she finally stepped into the crowd, her first sight was of her parents, perfectly poised and exuding the familiar air of control. But something flickered in their expressions. Was it apprehension or surprise? Whatever it was, it ignited a spark within her. This was her stage, and she would take it as she stood in front of everyone, microphone in hand. The swell of emotion almost overwhelmed her. The room hushed, anticipation crackling in the air. She looked out towards the sea of faces she recognized but felt distanced from. With each heartbeat, the moments that had constructed her identity rushed forward like a tidal wave, full of potential. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady, yet trembling with the weight of her truth. She felt the grip of silence sweep over the crowd as if holding its breath. This was the moment she had envisioned, the moment that demanded her authenticity. Each word would be a revelation. She was here, not to manage their expectations, but to reclaim her narrative. The tension hung thick like smoke, punctuated by her steady breaths, as she prepared to dive into the depths of her story. But what if her truth unraveled the fabric of their family ties? What if it shattered her parents' carefully orchestrated facade? As her heart raced, she realized the risk she was taking was not just for herself but for the potential of transformation and unveiling that might force them to see her, truly see her. For the first time, resolved, she took a deep breath, glancing at Jake in the audience, his encouragement a beacon of light amidst the shadows. It was time to embrace the tempest, to stand naked in her truth. Just as she was about to speak the first line of her meticulously crafted speech, a sudden flicker of movement caught her eye. The back of the room, the unmistakable figure of her brother stepped forward, his face pale with impending revelation. "Sarah, wait!" he shouted, drawing the attention of every soul in attendance. Her heart plummeted, a twist in her already precarious ascent. But was it an interruption or an unexpected shift in the narrative? The room's tension thickened, and she could almost feel the collective breath of the crowd held in suspense. What revelation was coming next? The sound of her brother's voice cut through the anticipatory silence like glass shattering, and suddenly, all eyes were on her. Sarah blinked, caught between the desire to unfold her narrative and the jarring interruption that threatened to derail her moment. Her brother was a wild card in this carefully controlled setup, and as he stepped closer, the vulnerability exposed by his presence was palpable. "Sarah," he said again, his voice cracking under the weight of unspoken words. "You need to know something before you go any further." Every muscle in Sarah's body tensed. This was not how she had envisioned this moment. Hadn't she spent countless hours strategizing about how to present herself? What could be so urgent that he felt compelled to hijack her truth? "Don't listen to any more lies," he urged, glancing back nervously towards their parents. "This isn't just about you. It's about both of us. Please let me stop," she interjected, her heart pounding. Anger flared within her, mingling with confusion. "What do you mean lies? This is my speech, my moment. If you have something to say, say it after." The crowd murmured, sensing her distress. Sarah could feel their eyes darting between her and her brother. Should she invite this chaos into her delicate plan? The mantras of self-empowerment she had rehearsed blurred before her, replaced by an encroaching dread of familial betrayal. "Sarah, they lied to you about the wedding," he whispered urgently, his voice barely above the noise of disbelief surrounding them. It's bigger than that. They tried to control everything, including what you're about to say." Her world tilted on its axis as disbelief coursed through her. "What are you suggesting?" she demanded, her pulse racing, grappling with the implications of his accusation. The room felt increasingly electric, the air stifling. An internal battle raged. Should she walk off stage, retreat to safer ground? Or could this unexpected twist be her opportunity to expose not just her truth, but theirs too? "Just trust me. Please," he continued, desperation spilling over as he moved closer. "You've always wanted to be free from their expectations. You have the power to shape this moment, but you have to know you weren't a mistake to them. They just thought it was easier to hide the truth. He took a deep breath, apprehension woven into his features. The wedding isn't just a celebration. It's a concealment. They set it up to distract you, to control the narrative. The idea that her parents had engineered this spectacle to keep her in check was nauseating. The implications roaring whirlwinds of rage. Yet here was her brother, usually so in tune with their family dynamics, unraveling a new narrative that could expose both herself and them. The depths of his claim sent tremors through her resolve. She had been so focused on her battle for self-identity that the thought of deeper familial machinations had barely grazed her mind. Her brother's plea rang true in all its unsettling clarity. What had they been safeguarding? What truths had her parents buried under layers of expectation? In that charged moment, Sarah felt something shift within her, an awakening laced with defiant clarity. She owned the narrative, not just her moment in the spotlight but the whole story. The transformation she sought began with that very vulnerability her brother had exposed. How could they do this? She murmured, the initial shock morphing into a surge of empowerment. I can't just let them control my truth anymore. The stakes had risen, but so had her resolve. She met her brother's gaze, determination flooding her being. If their foundation was a facade, then it was time to dismantle it with the very fabric of her reality. Let us reclaim this together, she asserted, flicking her gaze to the crowd full of expecting faces. The veil of secrecy threatened to suffocate her liberation, but it also beckoned to be torn down. With Jake's encouraging nod bolstering her spirit, she turned to address the audience, channeling an intensity fueled by her brother's disruption. You've all come here with your perceptions of what this day means. But now I find that my truth cannot be quelled any longer. The excitement in the air was taut, thick with uncharted possibilities. What she would reveal next was not just her story but a reckoning that was long overdue. Here was the cusp of transformation, her truth emerging from the shadows into the light. What awaited the crowd, the family, and especially her parents, was the unfolding of a narrative that could shatter their constructed reality. She looked into the faces of those who had shaped her perception. She knew she had merely begun to scratch the surface. The next layer demanded revelation, and she was ready to bring the entangled threads of her history to the forefront. Let us talk about everything you were never supposed to hear, she declared boldly, piercing the tension with a newfound purpose. What had they hidden beneath their polished exteriors, and how would those revelations shift the balance of power within her family? The question loomed large, teetering on the brink of exposure. Sarah stood poised on the cusp of chaos, her heart racing as she surveyed the sea of expectant faces. What had begun as a celebration now threatened to unravel into an exposé that would challenge the very foundation of her family's carefully constructed personas. The weight of anticipation hung heavy in the room, layered with the collective disbelief of her audience. She took a deep breath, the surge of adrenaline igniting her voice. I was told this day was about love and unity, she began, her words grounding her even as her brother's revelations echoed in her mind. But the closer I got to this moment, the less I felt connected to those ideals. A ripple of gasps coursed through the crowd, but she pressed on, emboldened by the tremor of honesty within her. Every word she uttered pulled the veil further away from her parents' carefully curated world. The facade they had maintained was cracking, exposing raw, unfiltered truth. Her brother stood off to the side, a silent pillar of support, his presence invigorating her resolve to dismantle the deceit that had woven through their family life. I've spent my life trying to fit into the mold they created for me, she continued, allowing the weight of her frustration to surface. I've chased after their approval, only to realize it was never really mine to begin with. With each declaration, Sarah felt herself shedding the layers of expectation that had weighed her down for so long. The vulnerability was terrifying yet intoxicating. She could feel the stirrings of power within her, empowering her to unveil the complexities of her identity past, present, and future. As she scanned the audience, her gaze landed on her parents, their expressions a labyrinth of shock, anger, and fear. They had expected her to play the dutiful daughter, and instead, she was stepping into the role of the defiant woman determined to reclaim her voice. It was unsettling yet exhilarating. She recognized she was not only transforming her own narrative but challenging theirs. Why should I celebrate a wedding built on lies? She questioned, her intensity rising. What kind of union is worth celebrating if it starts with deception? There were murmurs of agreement, and she leaned into the uncertainty, using it as fuel. The collective energy in the room shifted, a crack in the facade, an opening for profound revelation. The lies don't just imprison me, they imprison all of us. Sarah pleaded, directing her focus toward her parents. What do you think I'll find if I follow the paths you've set for me? A life that I didn't choose? Her voice trembled between anger and resolution, and she felt invincible yet unmoored. Sarah, her mother, finally interjected, her voice strained and emotional. We only wanted what's best for you. I don't think you know what's best, Sarah shot back. It's time for me to break free from what you want for me and discover what I want for myself. The realization settled in that her development had always been stifled by their expectations. But here was a chance for her to chart a new course, one that could emancipate her from the shackles of their design. Suddenly the door burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the light, a family friend whose presence shifted the energy once again. I just got a call, he stammered out, breathless. It's about the real reason for the wedding. You need to hear this now before it's too late. The atmosphere thickened with suspense. What more could possibly unravel? As Sarah looked back at her brother, they exchanged a knowing glance. This was just the beginning of uncovering the truth that had long been buried. What hidden revelations awaited them? And how would her journey of self-discovery continue as the layers of family deceit peeled away? The tension in the air crackled with potential, the promise of confrontation looming with every heartbeat. The room fell silent, punctuated by the stranger's urgent revelation. Sarah felt her body tense, as if a tidal wave of truth was about to crash upon their carefully constructed lives. The air pulsed with uncertainty, and every eye turned toward the newcomer, anticipating the storm he would unleash. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice steadier than she felt. She could sense the cadence of her heart quickening, the weight of potential devastation heavier than any expectation she had been fighting against. The man stepped forward, visibly grappling with the gravity of the moment. I received a call from someone close to the wedding planner. There are circumstances surrounding the wedding that could change everything we thought we knew. Just spit it out. Sarah snapped, frustration mingling with fear. The tension hung like a noose, and she refused to stand idle. Her brother stepped closer, an anchor amid the chaos, and Sarah felt the strength of their bond solidify. They're not just getting married for love, the friend breathed. This is a business deal. Your parents, they arranged this wedding to solidify ties and status. It's about a merger between families. Expressions in the room flickered from disbelief to outrage. Sarah's mother winced, her previous emotional turmoil now morphing into something darker. Doubt crept into Sarah's mind, battling with the hope she had just wrapped around herself. The weight of this revelation shook her tightly knit perception of family. She had believed her parents wanted to celebrate a love story, yet here was evidence of something far more cynical. Did they truly think manipulating her life would protect her from the world or elevate their social standing? The very thought sickened her. Why would you go along with this? Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. You never once thought about how this would affect me? Why? Her mother averted her gaze, the fabric of her carefully maintained facade fraying. It's complicated, Sarah. We have obligations. This was meant to ensure our security. Security? Sarah interrupted, a mixture of rage and compassion boiling within her. You would sacrifice my happiness for status? For what? Your vision of success? Her mother's voice faltered, and Sarah seized the moment. She understood now, if she did not take control of her narrative, others would dictate her fate for her. The realization washed over her like defiance itself, igniting a fiery determination that surged through her veins. From this day forward, I refuse to be a pawn in your game, she declared. I will not marry for convenience. I'm done adhering to expectations. Sarah felt lighter as she spoke, shedding chains that bound her to a future she had never wanted. The crowd's reaction was a disjointed symphony of gasps and murmurs, but she pressed on. The chaotic blend of pride and defiance bolstered her courage as she addressed the audience. If any of you truly care about me, then support my choice. I want to create a life defined by passion, not obligation. As she breathed in the collective energy around her, one thought crystallized in her mind. This might be a pivotal moment in her life, the fulcrum upon which her new reality would pivot. She could feel the dynamics shifting, equal parts terror and exhilaration coursing through her. But just before she could formulate her next steps, the family friend interjected with an urgent tone. You need to know something else. There's a hidden agreement tied to this wedding, one that involves you. And once it's revealed, everything might be at risk: your freedom, your future. A sense of impending doom intertwined with the resolve surging within her. How much more would be uncovered? As her heart raced with anxiety and determination, she knew she needed to confront not just her parents but the entire deceit that wrapped around her life. What were the terms of this agreement? Would the truth pull the rug out from under her newfound freedom, dragging her back into familiar chains? The precarious edge of the unknown loomed larger than ever, and Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Her path, now shrouded in deeper complexities, demanded courage beyond what she had ever known. The dim light of the room faded into a murky haze as Sarah grappled with the revelations. Every face around her reflected shock, prompting an internal maelstrom that threatened to spiral out of control. Instead of retreating into silence, she felt an unfamiliar fire awaken within her, demanding to be reckoned with. What do you mean, hidden agreement? Her question echoed through the tension-filled silence, cutting through the unease. The family friend hesitated, wrestling with his next words as if the very act of speaking could shatter the delicate balance of the moment. It's about the merger, but there are stipulations, ones that put you firmly in the spotlight. Your name is part of the legal documentation. You have a say, but only if you're willing to challenge your family. Self-doubt flickered briefly within her, but Sarah clamped down on it. The walls her parents had built around her seemed to constrict tighter, yet the thought of clawing her way out imbued her with newfound clarity. Then I have more to lose than I thought, she murmured, a steely resolve hardening her voice. Taking an unsteady step forward, she confronted both her parents and the room's increasing scrutinization. I never agreed to this. Why was I not asked? You've stripped me of my agency. The room held its breath, her furious determination lighting a fire akin to rebellion against those who had raised her. Sarah's mother finally met her gaze, the facade of authority and control crumbling. We thought we were protecting you, Sarah. We thought we knew what was best. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. No, you thought you knew what was best for yourselves. This isn't about me. With that realization, a wave of empowerment submerged her discontent. She needed to turn this around, seize control not just of the narrative but over her own identity. I'll review the agreement, every single line. But on one condition: either you accept my path or prepare for the fallout. If it boils down to me, I will not be bullied into a fortune-bound marriage. Suddenly, as commitment solidified within her, another thought arose. Beneath the bitterness, she realized she had been handed an opportunity to reclaim her power. The hate she harbored towards the stifling expectations of her life could morph into the very fuel that burned away her boundaries. This hidden agreement could potentially hold the key to unlocking a life where she didn't merely exist but thrived with authenticity. Dissecting the tangled web of family politics coupled with her emotions would be no easy task. The agreement wasn't merely a string of letters. It could embody the pathways to her liberation. While panic gripped her, she also felt the stirrings of a plan. Shall we begin? Sarah demanded, challenging the uncertainty in the room, her spirit rallying them toward confrontation. We're diving into this together. I will not be left out of decisions that shape my life any longer. The murmurs shifted around her into something resembling support, a subtle but vital shift in the room's dynamics towards her favor. The weight of what lay ahead was immense, but if there was a path forward, this was it. The road mapped out ahead seemed laden with obstacles and traps, yet each hurdle forecasted not just challenge but possibility. With her newfound sense of agency solidifying like armor around her, Sarah realized she couldn't walk this path alone. She needed allies, even unexpected ones, to dismantle the intricacies of what was at stake. But just then, a familiar face entered the room, one she hadn't expected to see and wasn't sure she wanted to face. I hope I'm not too late, said Max, the man she had thought was removed from her narrative, stepping into the fray with a determined expression. Because we have a lot to discuss. Her heart raced, with his presence stirring questions she hadn't planned for. Was this a distraction? Or could he be the ally she had unintentionally invited into the chaos? Sarah's resolve tightened. The walls were shifting with every word exchanged, And navigating this territory was becoming more dangerous yet tantalizing. The clock was ticking, and with Max's appearance, she realized that the hidden layers of her life were far more tangled than she had imagined. What role would he play in exposing the truth? Sarah's mind raced as she faced Max, his eyes holding a mixture of concern and intrigue. The years spent avoiding him suddenly felt like a winding road leading right back to an intersection she never expected. He had been a part of her life, albeit in a distant capacity, and now he stood as unpredictably close as a guardian angel or a looming storm. Max, she started, her voice faltering for just a moment before she regained her footing. What do you know about this hidden agreement? Her question hung in the air, heavy with implications and unspoken histories. He stepped further into the room, the shadows of the past weaving into his demeanor. I overheard some discussions a few weeks ago, he confessed. I was concerned about your situation. When I realized you would be pulled into this merger without your consent, I felt you needed to be prepared for what's coming. Prepared? The word sent a tingle of apprehension down Sarah's spine. She had spent so long boxed in by her family's expectations. What did being prepared truly mean in a world where her choices were dictated by those around her? So, you came here to help or to meddle? She asked, her voice steady but edged with lingering doubt. Max's expression softened as he ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that reminded her of simpler times. I want to help, Sarah. I know we haven't always been on the same page, but your fight is my fight too. We can uncover this agreement together. Uncertainty flooded her thoughts, battling with an emerging desire to accept his offer. She could use a partner in a fight against the parchment that shackled her fate. Why should I trust you? The challenge in her voice was undeniable, but beneath it lay an inkling of hope. He took a step closer, sincerity etched into every feature. Because I've seen you stand up for what's right, even when it scared you. That's why I came back, to ensure you know you're not alone anymore. The resolve coursing through Sarah felt like a pulse, rhythmically reminding her of the power within her grasp. Accepting Max's help could effectively bolster her standing in this family dynamic. A partnership, however tenuous, could turn her hesitations into assets. All right, she conceded. We'll work together. But this is my life. Your role will be to support my decisions, not make them for me. He nodded, respect flashing in his eyes. Understood. Before they could strategize further, her parents' astonished silence drew attention back to the room, their expressions ranging from discomfort to barely veiled trepidation. Sarah could feel the atmosphere hanging thick with unresolved tension. They had underestimated her resilience and her capacity for change. I'll need access to all the details about the merger and the agreement, she said, her voice ringing clear and strong. I expect complete transparency. The words spilled from her like declarations of war, her previous timidity dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The role of a victim was officially off the table. Her mother's brow furrowed, the struggle between denial and acceptance evident in her posture. We didn't want to burden you, Sarah. By burdening me with secrets? Sarah shot back. Your intention doesn't matter. Before she could finish, Max interjected, this isn't just about your family anymore, Sarah. This is about your future. His eyes locked on hers and she felt the weight of agreement press against them. The walls they had built, both physical and emotional, began crumbling at the edges. It wasn't just a matter of exposing the hidden agreement anymore. It was about forging her own path, navigating her own destiny, and reclaiming her narrative. Tension thickened as her parents exchanged anxious glances, fear palpable in the air. Sarah felt empowered, but she was also keenly aware of the tumultuous terrain ahead. I'll dig deeper into the agreement, validate its implications, Max offered, his determination echoing her own resolve. Nodding in acknowledgement, Sarah glanced around the room. The dynamics had shifted entirely. It was clear her family needed to adapt or risk losing what little power they held over her. But a voice in her mind reminded her secrets never fade quietly. There would be repercussions, and she would either be the one wielding the truth or face threats she hadn't anticipated. As the meeting progressed, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning of her journey toward self-actualization. She would not just be reclaiming a document, she would redefine her legacy. What further surprises lay hidden in the agreement? And how far would her family go to maintain their grip on their plans for her? The answers lurked in the shadows, waiting to be unveiled. The stage was set for confrontation, and the next act was just around the corner. The following days became a frenzy of digging deeper, grasping for every shred of information related to the merger and the shadowy agreement that had tangled her life in knots. Max had committed himself to the venture, and Sarah felt the thrill of anticipation and the sharp bite of fear with each passing moment. Gone were the days of sidestepping her own destiny. She was now lodged firmly in the driver's seat, determined to chart a course on her own terms. As she sat in her room, a cluttered expanse of papers and documents scattered across her desk, the sharp sound of her phone vibrating broke her focus. It was Max, a text flashing across the screen. "It's worse than I thought. Meet me later." Her pulse quickened. The urgency in his message sparked a flood of questions. What had he uncovered? The possibilities began to unravel in her mind with dizzying speed. Had her family foreseen her awakening and set traps to limit her agency further? With renewed determination, she hurried to meet him at the cafe where they had agreed to meet. Max sat hunched over a stack of papers. His forehead crinkled in concentration, the shadows beneath his eyes indicating long hours of research. As she approached, Max looked up, his expression shifting from fatigue to alertness. "Sarah," he began, urgency lacing his tone. "I found inconsistencies in the documents relating to that merger. It appears they're not telling you the full truth." "What do you mean?" The question shot out before she fully processed the implications of his words. Max spread a few papers across the table, each bearing crisscross lines and annotations that hinted at complexities meant to remain hidden. "There are clauses that could allow your family to manipulate the terms without your consent completely. Essentially, they could solidify their control over the company and over you." Panic surged beneath her skin. "So this agreement isn't just a formality. They're planning something more sinister." "Yes, and they've created a narrative that puts you in a compromised position, leveraging your wedding for leverage. They'll present it as a noble act of protecting you. It's a facade." The words gripped her thoughts, a tight vice that squeezed her breath momentarily away. She had long felt the weight of her family's expectations, but now it was painfully clear that her autonomy was at stake. It wasn't just about a prospective marriage. It was about a lifetime of choices being stolen by those she expected to trust. "I refuse to be their pawn," she declared, a fierce fire igniting inside her. Max leaned forward, admiration gleaming in his eyes. "That's the spirit. But we need to move strategically. If they catch wind of what we're onto, they could take measures to ensure you're silenced." A chill ran through her. It wasn't just about standing up against her family, it was about navigating a minefield of deception. She could feel the familiar edges of her fears creeping in, whispering doubts that she could take on this fight. But she quickly quelled them. "Let's expose the truth. I'll confront them directly. The more prepared I am, the less they can sway me." "Yes," he encouraged. "You're stepping into a position of power and this is crucial. But remember," he cautioned, "they know your weaknesses. They'll use them against you. We need to be meticulous." Sarah contemplated this. She understood that impulsive reactions could lead to detrimental consequences. But now, with Max by her side, she felt emboldened, a new resolve gleaming in her chest. Each piece of the puzzle she unearthed sparked a deeper introspection. She was no longer the girl hiding in the shadows of her family's expectations. She was evolving, becoming a woman who would challenge the structures that sought to define her. With newfound clarity, Sarah gathered her documents. "Let's plan this out. If I'm going to confront them, I need to know what I'm up against." As they strategized, she sensed the stakes rising. Would her coming confrontation shatter the fragile state of her family ties, or would it catalyze an undeniable awakening? Caught in the web of impending conflict, she wondered if she would unravel the truth in time. The weight of her family's potential wrath loomed large, but she was determined to find her voice amidst the chaos. What truths would surface in the confrontation? And would her resolve stand unyielding against the storm brewing within her family? The answers loomed just beyond her reach, shimmering like mirages in the distance. As the wedding day dawned, the sun cast a warm glow through the panes of the venue. But for Sarah, it felt less like a celebration and more like a juncture of liberation. She stood at the altar surrounded by friends and family. Her heart echoed with nerves but also an undeniable strength. There would be no veil of silence today. Instead, she had curated every detail to be a beacon of her truth. With Jake by her side in spirit and resolve, and Max's presence bolstering her confidence, Sarah vowed to embrace her narrative. Every time she felt the pull of fear, she remembered the revelations from her brother, the hidden agreement, and her right to reclaim her autonomy. The fluttering nerves shifted into purpose, a promise to herself and her future. As the officiant began, Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. Today, she said, her voice steady amidst the murmuring crowd, is not just a wedding. It is a celebration of choices, of identity, and of breaking free from expectations. She felt the room focus, the atmosphere thickening with anticipation. Her courage surged. This was her moment, not just to be seen but to redefine her presence in the family she had often felt beholden to. The astonished expressions of her parents didn't escape her notice, but she pressed on, undeterred by their discomfort. I stand here not just for myself, but for every woman who has ever felt overshadowed by familial expectations. My life, my choices, it's time I own them completely. The room stirred. Shock rippled through the guests like electric currents, a palpable recognition of her transformation. With her heart racing, she glanced swiftly at the audience that had once seemed so intimidating. Now their faces reflected a mix of awe, admiration, and surprise. This was about her reclaiming not just her wedding but the entirety of her life. Raising her voice, she continued, "What you believe today is not only a union but a breaking of chains, the chains of conformity and obligation." The truth coursed through her veins like a tidal wave, clear and unapologetic. With a decisive breath, she shared the hidden story. The lies her parents weaved, the power dynamic she was forced into, and the way it had suffocated her potential. This day was intended to celebrate love, but had instead been transformed into a means to control my identity. I deserved to choose my path. The applause that erupted felt liberating, a confirmation that she was not alone in her fight. In that moment, a shift occurred within herself. Vulnerability morphed into strength. Sarah discovered the importance of her voice and the power of her story. She had not only prepared a speech, she was bearing witness to her own transformation, acknowledging the girl who once succumbed to fear and ridicule and celebrating the woman who had risen to claim her identity. As she stood there on her wedding day, she felt the full weight of her past lift, replaced by a lightness and clarity that resonated deep within her core. Each word she spoke infused her with renewed confidence, a solid foundation upon which to build her future. Amidst the applause, Sarah's gaze fell upon her parents, whose initial shock began to morph into something she hadn't anticipated: understanding. Finally, she called out to them, "If I have learned anything through this process, it's that love should never come at the expense of freedom. It's time for us to rebuild on honesty and support." Tears glimmered in her mother's eyes. The facade that had governed their relationship for years prepared to crumble. The tension broke, replaced with a profound silence filled with the promise of opportunity. In that moment, Sarah achieved not only personal resolution but professional vindication as well. She was no longer defined by her parents' expectations but by her aspirations, no longer the anxious girl clutching her planner, but the woman commanding her narrative. As the vows exchanged shifted into a celebration of authenticity and courage, Sarah realized her growth wasn't just about breaking free from the past. It was an invitation for others to do the same. The audience, witnessing her journey, now held a powerful testimony of transformation. She had not only conquered her fears, she had inspired those around her to embrace their truths. In the weeks that followed, conversations around the family table grew deeper, honest, and respectful. Her parents began to acknowledge the lessons learned through the wedding's upheaval. Sarah forged a path into a role where she no longer felt invisible but empowered, an established position within her family and her professional life as an accomplished lecturer, unearthing stories of resilience in her teachings, forever transforming the messages she shared with her students, embracing challenges as opportunities. Sarah had finally come into her own, a moment of deep satisfaction, deserved fulfillment, and fair recognition for the journey she had undertaken. Each day stood as evidence of a newfound strength, a solid confidence radiating from her core. So now, that chapter closes but another opens. You need to subscribe now to keep following exclusive emotional stories just like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because your support makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this powerful conclusion. This is your moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.